Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Howdy.
Ruben Bressler.
Greetings, friend. How are we this evening?
We're good. But we did bad. We did real bad.
Yeah, look, at this point I can only apologize. All right? We done messed up, AA Ron, all right? So we'll get to that as you have to introduce the segment and then I will mea culpa.
It's fine. It's fine. You know, we all make mistakes. We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant, letting us know exactly how wrong we were. And what artist we did not choose as one of our top 10 artists. Ruben?
Yeah. Look, all right. So I did some research, all right? Hopefully my work that I've put into this will make up for, in some way, shape, or form, just how bad of a faux pas this happened to be, all right? So this week, across the Patreon, the Libsyn, the YouTube, the Reddit, the Facebook, the Snapchat, the Grindr, we went through all of our various social medias. There were a grand total of 82, at least. I counted 82 suggested names across all comments for honorable mention. Of those, 25 of the 82 were for Rebecca Gay. All right, here's my list. I was going through, making tick marks. I'm going to post this to the Facebook later, but you can screenshot here. Look at all those. Look at that massive amount of tick marks up top. You can see some of the other faves. Were Richard Kane Ferguson. That's the RKF there. You got Vulcan Baga there. You got some Todd Lockwood love. You got a Steve Argyle at 5. But second place was 5. Rebecca Gay had 25. That's about a third of the overall comments.
Hashtag gay pride. Like, you guys really showed out. Like, I did not anticipate that. Yeah.
We definitely got ratioed, as the kids say.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, when you beat your nearest competitor by 250%, it's yeah. So obviously she had to win honorable mention. The market spoke, but we needed to narrow it down with so much competition. Picking out one comment was tough. But I chose a succinct and well-worded submission from user Hey Apples on YouTube, who writes, Rebecca Gay's exclusion has to be the biggest travesty on this list. With so much game imagery focused around turbulence and conflict, Gay has managed to stand out in her work by making some of the most serene, calming images in the history of the game. Of any artist, past or present, Gay most seems like the one where you could rip their art straight off the card, frame it, and have it casually blend in at an exhibit in the Louvre.
The Louvre.
So yeah, Hey Apples is going to win this week, thanks to all the commentators. And I would just like to say that clearly we were wrong, but I hope you don't hate us.
Yep.
Wow.
That crow tastes delicious because, man, that was a faux pas. That was a mistake, and it's fine.
Look, we stand by our mistakes. We all grow strong. Whatever doesn't kill us makes for good honorable mention.
Well, okay. So, first of all, thanks very much, Hey Apples. Get in contact with us in some form or fashion. Best way is Twitter, but either way, pick a social media network. Go nuts. It's fitting that my number 10 is illustrated by Rebecca Gay. Because,
nice segue.
Yeah, because, if we're going to talk about mistakes, well, let's talk about mistakes undone. Sure. So, and this one is cool. And part of my list, it was hard to kind of wrap my head around how was I ranking these exactly? Some part of it obviously is, power level and sort of what it's done on the main stage. But like some of it is how it makes you think about Magic differently or how it really changes things. And this is really cool because this card came out in Shadowmoor and it's never been printed since. It's only been printed the one time. But Enchanted Evening is just gorgeous piece of artwork. It's a blue-white hybrid and 3 generic mana for a rare enchantment that says all permanents are enchantments in addition to their other types. So what enchantment is more enchanty than the one that makes everything enchantments? So
it has the word enchant right in the name.
That's what I'm saying.
It says the word enchant more than most any other card, I'm sure. I'm sure there's a card that's like enchantment, enchanted enchantment is something. But yeah, that's a great one. Enchanted Evening is a gorgeous piece. All that Shadowmoor stuff is just so interesting in the sort of because Lorwyn is just a beautiful pastoral setting, especially compared to everywhere else in Magic. Right. And then you have this sort of Twilight, not the movie, Twilight-ish setting of getting a little creepy on some of this cute stuff, and Shadowmoor really did that really well.
Yeah, whenever I think of Enchanted Evening, I immediately think of Patrician Scorn, which is the 2-card combo where you make everything an enchantment, and then you cast Patrician Scorn, which destroys all enchantments, and you essentially wipe the board. And then you have something like maybe a Planeswalker or a Gargadon that hasn't quite, come off suspend yet, and then it sort of comes out and surprise, and then you just kill somebody with whatever's left over. And so that's what I think of. But yeah, it's a gorgeous card.
Yeah, and it's really, to me, it was just like, well, if it's an enchantment that makes all the enchantments, that makes my top 10 enchantments.
Great way to kick off the list.
That's where we're at. So, Ruben, what's your number 10?
My top 10 list, I put together a formula, and I'll talk about how I came to my decisions as I go through the show. But this one, it won a Pro Tour. It's in the Magic the Gathering Online Cube. It had a promo printed about it, all right? Mm-hmm. So is it powerful contextually? Yeah, it won a Pro Tour. All right, it won not just a Pro Tour, it won an eternal, not an eternal format Pro Tour, but an older format Pro Tour in I believe it was old extended. Is it in the cube? That means it has longevity. It's still powerful to this day. It's in the cube. Is there a promo? Does that mean it's popular? This one had a pretty gorgeous promo. I'm a big fan of the promo that they came out with for Honor of the Pure. So Honor of the Pure is a colorless and a white enchantment originally from M10. White creatures you control get +1/+1. This one's emblematic of the old Glorious Anthem effects. There are lots of things that do what Honor of the Pure does in sort of a different way. You can look at cards like Tempered Steel. You can look at Benelish Captain that just came out in Dominaria. Honor of the Pure, though, in the hands of Paul Rietzel, all right? 2010 Pro Tour Amsterdam won that tournament with White Weenie. And that's like the last time that a White Weenie deck was a really powerful feature of a format, too.
Thank God.
Oh, yeah. And I was there for that one. It was absolutely terrific. Honor of the Pure is just basically upgraded Crusade. Crusade affected everyone's creatures, and Honor of the Pure only affects yours, and at a cheaper mana cost, or an easier mana cost with just a generic mana. But as a card itself, like, super crazy powerful. As a White Weenie aficionado, oh man, this was terrific. Even if, 3 Dudes Seriously came and went, and I wasn't really sure, because, who knows.
This card was really important in that deck in particular because it did have Spectral Procession. It also had a bunch of 2/2s, specifically out of the sideboard. It really wanted to protect its Aethersworn Canonists, of which it had 4 in the main deck, but also wanted to grow its Burns and Forge Tenders to stay out of 1/1 range, which was I believe important in that format. I'm not entirely sure, but it did protect all your 2/2s from Punishing Fire. So your Aethersworn Canonists and Knight of the White Orchids and Rangers of Eos stayed out of range. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean this is the White Weenie card. I mean, when I see it in cube, it always goes like 14th, or I'm like immediately taking it and then 3-0ing that draft.
Oh yeah,
because Honor of the Pure is bananas.
Mono White always does well for me in the Moto Cube. Pretty much in any iteration, whichever flavor they have, I'll just draft Mono White because it just answers everything. It's whatever. All right, so Aaron, what's your number 10?
Sometimes there are non-verbal cues that you can look at to determine what deck your opponent is playing. So, for example, if you see somebody casting Serum Powder, you're like, they're probably on Dredge. Or if you're facing Manaless Dredge and the person asks to not go first, they want to be on the draw. Sometimes people like to have matching sleeves, where like a Burn player will have red sleeves and a red mat. Or Merfolk players love to have blue sleeves and a blue mat. Or they might be wearing a t-shirt that represents their archetype on it. And when you are facing somebody whose deck is just this monstrous column of cards,
sure,
that you are facing my number 10, which is a Battle of Wits player.
Yeah.
So Battle of Wits is 3 colorless and 2 blue. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 200 or more cards in your library, you win the game. And God bless them. Every once in a while at a Modern tournament, you will see 1 or 2 people come out, and you know what you're up against because that thing's coming out. They're shuffling it in like segments. And it's a thing. I don't think it's ever won anything major, but every once in a while.
Top-aided a Grand Prix. Yeah, okay. Top-aided a Grand Prix, right?
Okay.
And in the hands of both John Finkel and Huey Jensen. I believe both top-aided that GP with a Esper Control Battle of Wits deck.
Okay, but yeah, so and sometimes I know Saffron Olive recently did a legacy version with like Brainstorm and Ramp and some tutors and Enlighten tutor and things like that. But God bless this card. It's just one of those cards that just struck a nerve, and people love to try to find ways to make this work, and I think it's great when they do.
Oh man,
Absolutely.
it's an interesting way to win. Like it's the ultimate Johnny card in terms of it just lays it out for you. It's just do you here? Okay, you this, and you're like, whoa, how do I do that? That's terrific.
Originally part of a cycle with cards like Test of Endurance and Mortal Kombat and Chance Encounter that I believe spanned 2 or 3 sets to get the full.
This was Odyssey and Judgment and all that
Odyssey,
stuff.
Judgment, Torment. I believe that Mortal Kombat was in Torment.
Right.
Obviously, Test of Endurance and Epic Struggle were in Judgment. And then Chance Encounter and Battle of Wits, I think, were both in Odyssey. With all those weird, you win the game if something is happening. Enchantments and yeah, it's just a delightful card to exist.
It is sweet. It's great because you always know. There's the thud. And you're like, okay, it's what we're doing now. This is our life now. Let's get this over with. All right, go over here to number 9. Ruben, what is your number 9?
My number 9 again got that contextually powerful Pro Tour win. It's one of my favorite enchantments of all time because when I first started playing Magic, this is one of the first cards that I was playing in competitive formats, beating people 3 times my size, 3 times my age in tournaments at like Origins Game Fair in 2000 probably, when I was like 13 or whatever. This card is just near and dear to my heart. It's from one of my favorite sets of all time, Apocalypse, which one of the ways that my parents got me to do homework. Little about me, I used to not do homework. I used to ace all the tests and do all the projects, and then just didn't do homework. I would get 100% on everything, except for I just wouldn't turn in homework, and I would get like a C+ in the class, and that's just how I existed in high school. One of the ways that my parents got me to be like, look, Ruben, you have to do homework sometimes, all right? Do it sometimes, was rewarding me with a pack of Apocalypse. If I ever did homework, which was a little bit of behind the scenes on the Ruben Bressler mindset, but one of the reasons was because that set had Pernicious Deed in it, and I just love me a Pernicious Deed. So Pernicious Deed is a colorless, a black, and a green, originally from the Apocalypse expansion, and reprinted several times, including in Conspiracy, one of the Conspiracy sets, and most recently in Masters 25. Pay X, sacrifice Pernicious Deed to destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost X or less. Speaking of school with this card, I learned the definition of the word pernicious and was able to use it in several papers in college, which I quite liked. The Judge promo of Pernicious Deed also fabulously popular. That's the art that is typically on the Magic Online version. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Pernicious Deed was a key part of Justin Gary's Pro Tour win in 2002 at Pro Tour Houston, when he won that with another important enchantment that I'm sure we'll get to later. But it's an important part of cleaning up all of those ground creatures, especially in against decks like decks that were using Llanowar Elves at the time, or even something like Psychotog or Alurin. It was just a very important part of cleaning up, and ever since then, it's been a key piece of decks that use Planeswalkers. Mm-hmm. Because if you notice, the Planeswalker type was not included there. It's not included on some of those cards, as opposed to Engineered Explosives, which doesn't exclude Planeswalkers, or Oblivion Stone is another good example that's a non-land. This one, you get to keep your Planeswalkers around, so you get to keep your Garrux and your Lilianas and your Rock deck around after you use your Pernicious Deed.
Yeah, tends to see play now in Legacy Nick Fit, because obviously if it kills your Veteran Explorers, you really don't care, and you're probably going to be ramping up to where you can do a really big Pernicious Deed for whatever's troubling you. We've seen them try to do fixed versions over the year. I know over the years, I believe Crime and Punishment was a dual card from one of the original original Ravnica sets. Gaze of Granite was something they did in the Return to Ravnica block, and so they've tried to do safer versions of it, which never really took off. But yeah, the card's amazing, and kind of like you, Ruben, I really learned what the word pernicious means, and also works really good in decks like Muldrotha for EDH, where you can pop it, and because it's a permanent board wipe, you can just get it back again and reset it. Yeah, card's fantastic.
Oh man, Pernicious Deed. This was when I came back to Magic, and this was around Mirrodin or whatever. You get that chance if you played a long time ago to figure out what you missed, right? And so when I came upon Pernicious Theory, I was like, what happened? That is a power level I'm not okay with. I was not prepared for, like, how powerful stuff and magic got, because I was like, Spirit Monger, that's the most ridiculous creature I've ever seen. And then they also gave you Pernicious Theory. It was ridiculous.
Yep.
I was just
also
geeking
got
out.
to play Vindicate if you were splashing white in that deck, which is what I always did. You got Birds of Paradise for access to the early mana. Didn't really combo with Pernicious Deed, but you know what? Sometimes you need to, instead of a 5-for-1, you need to 5-for-2 yourself. So
Yeah.
And Wizards tried to reprint it in Ravnica, City of Guilds, but they were afraid it was going to get too much attention. It was going to pull attention from everything else, which it probably would have. However, and since they've always tried these weird Plague Boilers or whatever to try to sort of get closer.
Plague Boiler had a lot of hype when it came out, specifically because of how similar it looked to Pernicious Deed.
Right, and so I'm just going to go ahead and call it. We're going back to Ravnica. We know we're going back to Ravnica.
Ooh.
I'm calling the Pernicious Deed that includes Planeswalkers will be in whatever the Golgari set is of the upcoming Ravnica set.
I was going to say, if you had called for a Pernicious Deed reprint, I would have pie bet that immediately. But you clarified it has to include Planeswalkers.
That's because that's how they fix it, and that's how they make it more interesting, and they can make it about the story and whatever.
Right.
Like,
so you think that there will be an enchantment of some cost that says pay X and sacrifice this enchantment, destroy all non-land permanents with converted mana cost X or less?
Yes.
I don't think
Would you? I will pie bet you. I already got two coming my way with Jaya and Cloud Sphinx Idiot.
Okay.
I think I got a good shot at this one.
All right.
Ooh, okay.
But this one's close.
So you'll give me any mana cost, whether they hybrid
I'll give
or
you
whatever.
any mana cost. But I need it to be an enchantment. I need it to be a black-green enchantment.
Okay.
Because I think that makes sense.
I
need it to have an activation cost of X somewhere in its cost.
Okay.
So like X black-green or X something, right? And sacrifice this enchantment, and then the text, destroy all non-land permanents with converted mana cost X or less.
Sounds about right. Or or we'll give you we'll say Planeswalker. Everything here plus Planeswalker. For whatever reason. Because they harken back to whatever. Like okay. Done. Sweet.
I'll take it.
Somebody mark that down. All right. So, Aaron, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is a card that is not black, but feels very black. You know, I'm kind of known for my affinity for death. You know, I love bringing things back from the dead. You know, I love attacking with legions of zombies.
What do you think that says about you as a person?
That I'm resilient.
How does that make you feel?
But the other side of the coin is the ability to sort of cheat death. And then there's nothing that, you know, exhilarates me more than just being able to look at a board full of creatures or to look at a game-winning spell and just be like, I'm not dying today. My number 9 is Phyrexian Unlife. So Phyrexian Unlife is 2 and a white. It's an enchantment. It says you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. As long as you have 0 or less life, all damage is dealt to you as though its source had infect. Damage is dealt to you in the form of poison counters. This is a staple of Modern Ad Nauseam. So being able to drop this and then casting something like Spoils of the Vault and just getting yourself to like -40. You know, that confused look on your opponent's face where they're like, oh, you're supposed to. It's like, oh no, that's loss of life. Like, it's not going to happen. And the way this works is with Alpha Strike. So, like, let's say you're facing a Merfolk player, and then they're like, whoop, and it's like, well, I'll go to, like, -20, but I'm not dying today. And that is just the most black feeling in the world. You know, being able to look at your life pad and sort of literally defy death is a really great feeling. Amazing art. You know, you look at sort of the person covered in what I assume is Phyrexian oil and still wearing that flawless, you know, white mask, you know, almost like the same material maybe that Elshnorn's made out of, that weird porcelain. You see sort of the eyes, these sort of, you know, almost what I assume is excitement at what they are, what they become. The art is horrifying. But between the art and just what it does, it's so black and it's so creepy. And I love this card. It's a little bit of a rules nightmare, but I love it, and it had to be on my list.
It's just, man, those eyes are just, ooh.
Yeah.
Jason Chan. I mean.
Yeah, another Jason Chan who we talked about during the show last week with the artists. Just killed it. I mean, obviously.
So he
couldn't die, but he killed it.
Is this character happy or sad? I took it as a sad, tragic, oh my god, what's happening to me type of way.
This is a 1,000-yard stare. I don't think that there's anything going on.
I took it as sort of almost like I don't want to say pleasure necessarily, but just sort of like a pride almost of like, yes. And yeah.
Interesting. Well,
so let me take y'all back to Grand Prix Richmond, the original modern GP that Mr. Evan Irwin and Star City Games put together. I was doing real well in that tournament. I had some nice things going on with my Ad Nauseam deck. Unfortunately, I misregistered my deck. And so the last round of day 1, I was told that I would begin day 2 with a game loss, because I forgot to register my Boseiju, who shelters all. I had a 59-card main deck. Oh, well, that's too bad. I am in the feature match area for that round against one Mr. Joe Demestrio, popular Magic the Gathering content creator, pro, and turns out he was playing Burn. So it didn't matter that I began with a game loss, because I resolved Phyrexian Unlife against the Burn deck. And the way that that card works against Burn is you gain 10 life and also time walk them half the time because of the way the trigger works.
Yeah. Right. My favorite moment involving this was at Grand Prix Indianapolis last year. Was a modern GP, and there was an Ad Nauseam mirror that was happening. And the Ad Nauseam mirror is painful. Like, I won't even do it. Like, I'm nice about it, but I'm just like, nope, I would rather eat convention center chicken tenders than do this. So they basically, each person had an unlife, and one of the people decides to cast Echoing Truth.
Oh, Bob.
Not realizing that it's all permanent. So he's
That's
like, Phyrexian Unlife. Mind you, they're both in the negatives.
Yeah.
And so the opponent's like, no. And then whoop, and then ended in a draw because,
Wow.
That's adorable. The key to the Ad Nauseam mirror, by the way, is whoever resolves the most 2/2s for 3.
Oh.
Which is awesome.
Like savages.
That's not good. That's just painful. I don't know what's going on
Right?
there. Well, so my number 9 is first of all an incredible image. One of the pictures and the images that, like, again, when I saw it, I knew this was just incredible. I will always call back to this as one of the coolest images of Magic. An enchantment that does really weird things. I like how it makes things weird. I like how enchantments can make the game entirely different than when before you played it. And it's a big mana spell, so like, oh my god, it's got a big effect. Well, Dovescape showed up in Dissension, and Dovescape is freaky weird because it's 3 blue-white hybrid mana and 3 generic mana, so 6 mana total for a rare enchantment. Whenever a player plays a non-creature spell, counter it. That player puts X 1/1 white and blue bird creature tokens with flying into play, where X is the spell's converted mana cost. So it just turns everything to birds. Everything's birds. Your deck went to the birds.
Yep. Your spells are now birds.
Happens when doves cry? Is that?
Oh, bother.
Wow. Yeah. They turn into doves and they kill you. Dovescape is cool. I thought it was just a great card. Really interesting. I mean, back in the day, I don't really think they knew what Azorius even was. Like, you know, they didn't really get a good grasp as to what Azorius was supposed to be doing. So they just had these really weird, random cards that look strange when you look at Return to Ravnica and what they did and versus back then.
There were like birds. There's a weird bird sub theme, and then like telepathy, and then weather was involved somehow. And they were really just. It feels like they just kind of had a dartboard, and we're just kind of hitting targets. And we're like, all right, that's what the Azorius is. And thank God they've refined them in recent sets. But when you look back at the original, it's just like, what were they doing?
Two copies of Dovescape almost won the Pro Tour in the hands of Andre Muller at the old extended Pro Tour when Remy Fortier defeated Andre Muller in the finals by countering an uncounterable Enduring Ideal with a Venser. Of course, that's how Venser works. Andre Muller almost got there with Enduring Ideal, and Dovescape was a big part of that game plan because of the way that interacts with Epic and turning off your opponent's removal and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Dovescape is a super weird, super like crazy effect on the game, but also super memorable.
Yeah, and that's and it was one of those things that, you know, again, like one of the first cards I thought of was like, man, I want to highlight cards that are like really weird at what they do to the game. Dovescape makes the game just really strange, and birds just start flying and then everyone dies. All right, let's move on here to number 8. And so this begins what we'll dub the cycle, because me and Rube are on it. We two peas in a
just
pod.
On a wavelength that is hard to believe.
Yeah, and you'll see as we go through the show, if you're listening, and you'll sort of cut to the end.
We somehow have the same number 8.
We do have the same number 8, exactly. Out of the 1,500 or so options, same number 8. Well, Ruben, what is it?
So the way that I built my list was I had 4 major qualities I looked for in enchantments. My first 2 had a Pro Tour win, they're in the cube, and they have a promotional item that proves that they were powerful, they had longevity, and that they were popular. But the most important quality of my top 10 is how powerful is it historically? And that means, is it banned? anywhere? Or is it restricted anywhere? Or has it been banned or restricted anywhere? By the way, tied for 10th with my Honor of the Pure and Pernicious Deed. Turns out Mirari's Wake and Banishing Light both qualify under that same, but I didn't have them in my top 10. Right now, I've got a card that didn't win a Pro Tour, came very close in the hands of Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa.
Yep.
It's in the cube, obviously. There's a promo that's gorgeous, and it used to be banned not just anywhere, but in Modern. Bitter Blossom is our number 8.
I'm sorry, what is it called?
One moment. Bitter Blossom. bitter Blossom.
So Bitter Blossom is
Bitter Blossom
is a rare originally from Morningtide, where they messed up big time because they gave this thing a creature type. Yeah, they got a little weird, and the last tribal block. We had a tribal block in a hot minute, I guess, unless you want to count Ixalan. But regardless, Bitter Blossom is a black and generic mana for a rare from Morningtide. It is a tribal enchantment fairy. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and put a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying into play. Now, the problem, of course, was you have Scion of Una, who was giving everything Shroud, including your other...
All fairies Shroud.
All fairies. Originally, this was a creature type rogue, and they changed it to fairy.
Spellsetter Sprite? Yeah.
Or design, something like that. But yeah, the fact that this was a tribal enchantment fairy instead of a tribal enchantment rogue was the real problem, because you could go down to like 4 or 3, and then your opponent's like, ooh, they're going to lose the mana crypt game, and then they just champion it with a Mistbind click, or they, are like, all right, I can get rid of that with my Wispmare. Nope, turns out it's Shroud with my Scion of Una. So yeah, that was a bit of a problem.
Yeah, it was, but it was incredibly powerful. This is one of those cards that basically every game back then in Standard, every single one of them, you would not believe how much I had to mulligan and how I won this game. Like, this is the card that gets you out of mulls to 3. Like, you had Mutavault, you had whatever the Fairyland was. What was the Fairyland, the black blue one?
Secluded Glen,
and you had a Bitter Blossom, and that was it. That was your opener, and somehow you got there because it just kind of steamrolls. It builds and it builds and it builds, and it's often too much for decks to take.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just say, I remember when it was unbanned. I think it was unbanned at the same time as Nicodle, or like around that time. And I remember just sort of the fear of like, you don't know what you're doing. Modern isn't ready for it. And then it fizzled. Like no one really did anything with it. And so I just remember the fear of like, it's, Bitter Blossom. And then,
I want to know who's responsible for banning a 1-mana 3/3. That's what I want to know. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah.
Obviously,
this deck nearly won Pro Tour Hollywood in 2008, but of course Charles Gindy ended up usurping all those fairies and those merfolks with his elves at that tournament. Perhaps the closest that Bitter Blossom came to winning a Pro Tour was at Pro Tour Kyoto in 2009, when Luis Scott Vargas, if you recall, started that tournament 16-0, 15-0, went undefeated through the Swiss with black-white tokens.
Yeah.
The old Knight of Meadowgrain Kitchen Finks Bitter Blossom deck. To gain that life back and et cetera. That would have given us a glorious anthem as a winner as well. But yeah, Bitter Blossom has proven itself not just a fairies card, but a tokens card. It pops up in sideboards of Affinity every once in a while. Mm-hmm. Like, imagine a turn 1 Bitter Blossom. After sideboard, your opponent's like, all right, I got all these ancient grudges, and your opponent goes like, Citadel, Mox Opal, Ornithopter, Bitter Blossom, go. Well, I guess I lose now. Yeah,
yeah.
In sideboard.
Reanimator is also tested as well. Kind of a similar deck. A deck that you think they might have a lot of sideboard hate for, and so if they're bringing in their surgicals and everything else, and you're like, here's enchantment and a bunch of 1/1s, deal with that, and they're like, you're just attacking them on a very different axis than what they're prepared for.
Yeah, ultimately. Yeah. Paying 5% of your life for a 1/1 flyer is a incredibly good deal because it pays off in dividends.
Another one that's got that Judge promo gift card, and so
yeah. I mean, Bitter Blossom, man, you could not get away from that card for years. Nope. Years.
Absolutely not.
Even if Elves won the Pro Tour, it didn't matter. Fairies was what just drove you insane.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, what's your number 8?
I'm an only child, which says a lot about my deck choices. Only children are very good at kind of playing by themselves. We don't have siblings, so we're very good at keeping ourselves entertained. We don't necessarily need the company. We don't necessarily want the company. We certainly don't like to share. And no card embodies that lifestyle, embodies what it's like to be an only child, like my number 8, which is Leyline of Sanctity. So Leyline of Sanctity is 2 and 2 white. It's an enchantment. If Leyline of Sanctity is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield for free. And you can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. So this is something, if you're playing a combo deck, leave me alone. Don't look at me. Don't touch me. I just want to play by myself. I just want my toys. You stay over there. I'm going to do my thing. And so if you're playing a combo deck, like say Sneak and Show, you're playing a deck like Ad Nauseam, you don't want to be the target of discard spells. You want to be able to have all your cards. You want to be able to combo off. This is a good sideboard choice against Burn. It forces them to attack you with creatures. This even has some fringe applications in Vintage. Oath of Druid's targets. So if you play Leyline of Sanctity, they can't target you with Oath. A lot of the graveyard hate in Vintage targets, which I didn't know about. Ravenous Trap targets. Tormod's Crypt targets, Nile Spellbomb targets, and all those things go out the window when you have a Leyline of Sanctity in play. And so I love this card, and to me it just embodies sort of what it's like to be like, just nope, maybe don't. Like when you're in school and you used to put your notebook up and you were taking a test, like just don't. I'm just gonna hide behind my little wall and do what I came to do.
Yeah, they had with the Leylines first showed up in Guild Pact, and they did some more in Magic 2012, I believe it was, or 2011.
2011.
2011, yeah, and so Leyline of the Meek was what it used to be, which creature tokens get +1/+1, which isn't near as exciting.
That was the white one, yeah.
Yeah, which was the white one, but it wasn't near as exciting as Ivory Mask. I just get a free Ivory Mask. Really, it's just I used to pay full price for that thing, and now I just get it for free.
Yeah.
You know, why pay for the mask when you get the effects for free?
Yeah. Leyline of Sanctity is also a nice flag bearer for all of the white hate enchantments. Mm-hmm. Things like Stony Silence, things like Rest in Peace, sorry Aaron, things that are traditional in those white prison style archetypes. And Leyline of Sanctity might be one of, if not the most popular of them, not just in the prison archetypes, but also just as generic, powerful white sideboard hate cards.
Absolutely. So that is our number 8. Let's move on here to number 7. Ruben, what's your number 7?
So my number 7 is also banned and restricted. This one is banned and legacy, restricted and vintage. All right, that's the power level we're talking about here. It's one of my favorite cards to first pick because you just get to in cube because it's one of the just an archetype that I don't get to build around very often. Mm-hmm. And my number 7 is Fast Bond.
You love you a Fast Bond.
I love me a Fast Bond. Also of note, it's banned in Mental Magic. All right, you
that's
can't
awesome.
if you're playing Mental Magic.
That's awesome.
That's one of the few stipulations. It's like that's too many land drops. That's a bit much. Fast Bond is 1 green mana, and it is pretty simple. You may play any number of lands on each of your turns. Whenever you play a land, if it wasn't the first land that you played each turn, Fast Bond deals 1 damage to you. So this was originally from Revised, I believe.
Alpha.
Was it Alpha?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this was Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Revised. This is, and then of course was in Vintage Masters Online, where it got the new art treatment from Nils Ham, who also did the promo Bitter Blossom that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Fast Bond Gush was a major part of the Vintage format for a very long time. As those two cards are great combos together. Fast Bond and Cube, you get things like Courser of Crufix to be able to just play all your lands for all time. It's a great card in the Storm archetype, as there are a ton of draw 7s, and you can empty your hand onto the board. It's just one of the most powerful enchantments in terms of, and also just like pound for pound, being only 1 mana. Boy, I love me a Fast Bond.
Yeah, I had at the Invitational, the 2007 Magic Invitational that I got to attend, I had the Fast Bond Gush deck. That's what I was playing in Vintage. And Stephen Menendian was trying to teach it to me. And then, so I've told the story before a few times, if you haven't heard it, of every time I had like the nuts in the hotel room, he'd be like, okay, next game. And I'm like, okay.
How do I win? Yeah.
I had all these nuts. I don't know how to crack them open. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
So when it got to the point of me having Fast Bond, I gushed out everywhere. I'm down to like 2 life, and I don't know what to do with myself. And then I'm like, I don't know how to win, and I just died, and that's what happened. So Fast Bond is a dangerous card. It is a very, very powerful card, but it is dangerous. But super fun though. That thing is overpowered. Aaron, what's number 7?
So we're going to keep the non-interaction train going. There's another card that sort of exemplifies what it's like, to be an only child or just to want to be left alone. This is a staple of the Enchantress deck, specifically in Legacy. This is I love the flavor of it, which I'll get into in just a little bit. My number 7 is Solitary Confinement.
Yeah.
Solitary Confinement is 2 and a white. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Solitary Confinement unless you discard a card from your hand, skip your draw step. You can't be the target of spells or abilities, prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. So when you are playing Argothian Enchantress or Enchantress's Presence, you are drawing multiple cards per turn. So it's very easy for you to deal with the drawback of having to discard a card because you're drawing so many cards. And it's just fantastic. Again, you want to be left alone, you don't want any damage to be dealt to you, and you want to buy yourself some time so you can build this critical mass of enchantments, use your Sarah's Sanctum, ramp into Emrakul, and win the game. But I love this, and I love the flavor of, you look at the art and you see the person sort of wrapping themselves in this protective bubble. Not only can things not come get you, but things can't go out. And so I take the flavor to mean that your health is kind of at risk, which means like the skip the draw step, and like if you don't, if you don't commit something, you don't find a way to keep yourself going, you'll just die in the bubble. And so, having to pay that cost is a juggling act. And I really love this card. I think it opens up a lot of, it makes you make some interesting choices for Enchantress. A lot of people think Enchantress is just drawing cards and laughing at your opponent, but this really changes how you play it. And I just love the flavor of it. I love being left alone, and that's why it's on my list.
Well, okay. It follows the theme.
Be alone.
Or whatever. Stay away. It's fine.
This is another major part of that Andre Muller deck. It's a huge part of all the Enchantress style decks, obviously, as you're able to replace the cards in your hand to pay the upkeep on Solitary Confinement. I love me a Solitary Confinement. I played the hell out of that card in Standard. Again, one of my favorite sets of all time, so obviously. And I think it's a great card. Foils are gorgeous, by the way.
Yes.
If you've never happened to see a foil solitary, which I can only imagine are $1 billion now because #MTG finance. So I'm a fan.
Yeah, it's in Squealock. This is how you give them the Squealock.
Yeah.
Foils are only $25.
Just
a steal.
Absolute
Pick up foils
steal.
today.
That's right. Well, my number 7 is one of my favorite cards in Cube. I'm not actually sure. I want to say it's won a Pro Tour, but I'm not 100% sure about it. But I know that they've printed it, and they've printed it, and they've printed it, and printed it, and printed it, and it's still in the $7 to $9 range, no matter how many times they print it, because this effect itself is very powerful. It's in every black deck that you're ever, like when you're drafting in Cube and you're in black, you want to see this card. You want to be able to play this card on the turn that you can, the earliest you possibly can get out a Phyrexian Arena. You get that card into play. Because Phyrexian Arena is awesome. It has an awesome story moment where Gerard's cutting off Urza's head, which is crazy. Phyrexian Arena came out originally in Apocalypse. 2 black and a generic mana for a rare enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. And it turns out your own personal Howling Mine, again, if it's worth a 1/1 flyer, 1 life is also worth a card. And it's
exchanging
super
life for resources, particularly cards, has a long and storied history. In black, 1/1 flyers, cards, both quite good. Has not won a Pro Tour. But has certainly had plenty of appearance in high quality, high competitiveness tournaments in the past. Again, Apocalypse, shout out to the best ever. And yeah, it's a fabulous story moment in the original art. Obviously, the new art, not a story moment, but also fabulous. And yeah, the card's great.
See Koth there, like fighting Phyrexians, a spark of resistance against a tide of corruption. Yeah, get it into the arena. It's our own Thunderdome.
Phyrexian Thunderdome.
2018, jeez.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So the problem with Phyrexian Arena and its name is that it's tough to reprint, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's tough to. You need an arena, and you need the Phyrexians as well. So even in the upcoming Battle Bond set, you've got the arena. I don't know, the Phyrexians are there. So you sort of need a lot of things to go right together, but the card is fantastic, and so it well deserved.
Absolutely. So let's move on here to our number 6. Ruben, what's your number 6?
I'm known for a couple of things. One of them is a tagline I used to say on one of my old shows, which is Magic the Newsening, which was your home for fair, balanced, and counterbalanced reporting. Counterbalance is my number 6. It's ridiculous. It's the only card on my list that isn't in the cube. because you need so much stuff to go with your counterbalance. Typically, just Sensei's Divining Top, but it does have the cool promotional Amonkhet Invocation printing. It's got a Pro Tour win in the hands of Remy Fortier, as we referenced earlier. It's been a part of many Grand Prix wins in both Miracles and also that Flash Hulk deck. Keep in mind, that deck also had Sensei's Divining Top Counterbalance lock in it in the hands of Steve Sadin. So Counterbalance is a hell of a card. So Counterbalance is blue for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, counter that spell if it has the same converted mana cost as the revealed card. It is also the only uncommon on my list.
Well, I don't. Why is it uncommon? I'm not really sure about that either. Like,
also
just stunk in draft. I mean,
first time I played against a Counterbalance was in Triple Cold Snap draft, and my opponent just played it, and then it countered 3 of my spells. I was so mad.
On tilt.
Oh my god.
How tilt?
Random flip. It was so annoying. It counted like a 2, a 3, and then like a 6. Or something absurd. Like a 5 or a 6. It was so frustrating. But yeah, Counterbalance, boy, that's a hell of a card.
There's been a lot of talk recently about the current state of Legacy. You know, some people feel like Legacy's in a very dark place right now, and a lot of the reason why people feel that way is they think that they banned the wrong thing. You know, Miracles had been dominant for so long, which we talked about on our sister show, the live show, about how many years Miracles had been on top and how many top 8s it had seen. And, you know, the DCI thought the answer was getting rid of top. And so, you know, Miracles has survived as sort of what's known as topless Miracles and is still very much a tier 1 deck. And, you know, we're seeing, you know, these other decks that have kind of come forward, and a lot of people are going, you banned the wrong thing. And so there are some conspiracy theorists that say if you ban Counterbalance instead of top, maybe we wouldn't have the Legacy that we have today. And it's just a very powerful card. And, you know, when you can manipulate your library with things like Brainstorm and Ponder and Portent and Predict and whatever it might be, you know, you really can set yourself up to just lock out the game, the countertop decks, like you said.
Yeah, it's a card that is, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what it was trying to do, and it gets around stuff weirdly, and it was in a format with split second, and that was weird because it can still get countered if you have a 3 on top for Croson Crib, and sometimes you have to prep it for that and whatever. And it was in a format with Dark Confidant and Sensei's Divining Top all in the same format, which was nuts. My
favorite memory of Counterbalance was I brewed up a blue-white Fairy Harbinger Counterbalance deck for States one year, and I almost made top 8 with that deck because Fairy Harbinger has flash, and you could put any fairy from your deck on top. And so I could counter 5 drops with Changeling Hero. I could counter 4s with more Fairy Harbingers. That deck had Momentary Blink in it to be able to get the lock going. I had a ton of fun with that deck. Obviously,
that's the fun they wanted you to have.
That's
not
the fun they wanted me to have. Not dominate Legacy for 3 years with Miracles or the old 4-color countertop decks. That was a little rough.
Right, they were thinking of your super cool Harbinger deck, not what happened.
Yeah.
Aaron, what's number 6?
My number 6 is a rules nightmare. Let me just break you off a little piece here. And it looks simple enough. Like when you look at the card, you don't know what goes into it. So let me walk you through it. You apply power, toughness, changing effects in a series of sublayers in the following order. A, effects from characteristic defining abilities. B, effects that set power and toughness to a specific number of value. C, effects that modify power and toughness but don't set power and toughness to a specific number or value. D, changes from counters. E, effects that switch a creature's power and toughness. This card's effect is always applied in B, which means the effects applied in sublayer C, D, or E will not be overwritten. They will be applied in the new value, also known as humility. So humility is 2 and 2 white. It's an enchantment, and it just says one sentence. It just says all creatures lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1. That's it. But apparently the act of doing that means a lot of things have to happen. And so when you go on the Gatherer page, there are literal walls of text about what this means. We got a sort of a new take on this in Standard recently, and my social media was full of judges being like, no, like, I'm not doing this. And so you know, there's a lot that goes into making this effect happen, and it's a heck of a sideboard answer in Legacy, specifically against like the show and tell decks where, you know, go look for an Emrakul. Whoop, it's a 1/1. Well, we've seen Godhead of Awe in Modern as sort of a take on this on a stick, where it turns all creatures into 1/1. That was a sideboard card that some people were playing to get rid of the Death Shadow decks, where it's just a 1/1. But yeah, this is a very popular, very powerful effect. Shout out to Phil Folio for that memorable art. Karn and the flavor text, and yeah, this just had to be one of mine because it's so just subliminally powerful.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the first sentence of this is the current interaction between humility and opalescence. And here we go, y'all. Strap in. We're talking about layer 4, layer 7B. Woo! It's getting crazy up in here.
Layers. Hashtag layers, kids.
Oh,
brush up.
Woo.
In case you're planning on playing against humility anytime soon. Yeah. The interactions with manlands, the fact that the layers apply differently so that your Mishra's factories stay 2/2s.
Yeah.
The Genjus, for example, from Kamigawa. We discussed Dovescape earlier. The interaction with the gods is also super interesting because they sort of flip back and forth. There used to be something having to do with time stamping. Like if you have 2 opalescence and humility or vice versa, there's like very strange things that happen with this card. On top of the fact that it's legacy playable 4-drop. Like this is a very powerful card.
It's a $50 card.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, it only showed up in Tempest one time. It is on the reserve list. So there's no more humilities right now.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the type of weird, dumb card that could go to $100 overnight. Just for no good reason. Just boop, $100 because we said so. Yep. And that's MTG Finance. All right. Well, that is awesome. And definitely one that
currently $70 was subject of a recent buyout.
Oh, well, of course it was. Is anyone surprised? So, speaking of rules nightmares, here was a card that started out basically bad. This is a card that started out more or less hating on a few older cards, but didn't really affect much. And this was a card that was just like a 50-cent rare. This was a bargain bin bleh that had been reprinted in a reprint set that no one even liked. And it was just, whatever. But over time, as non-basic lands have gotten better and better and better, Blood Moon has only gotten better and better and better. They printed this stupid thing in Chronicles, and now it's just $20 from Chronicles. I'm telling you, I had rows of Blood Moon that no one gave a crap about. That you could get Blood Moons anywhere for 50 cents, whatever. Here, take them off my hands, because nobody plays them. It was garbage. And now, as it becomes, a pillar of the format and helps rein things in, there wasn't much to rein in when the Dark first showed up. And Blood Moon is a red and 2 generic mana for a rare enchantment from the Dark that has 1 sentence of all non-basic lands are mountains. And that'll blow your mind, because Urborg shows up and all these other special effects with their layers show up. And Blood Moon, it's cool in that it doesn't really break much. It actually keeps a lot of stuff reined in. And, I think it gives you a different angle of literally just sort of playing the hate game of I know you're trying to do busted stuff, and I'm just here to stop you.
Well, I think the problem with Blood Moon is that, and I use the term problem lightly, but the problem is that it started off that way. It started off as being a card that I think had some good intentions, of just wanting to keep sort of greedy decks in check. But eventually it went from being a scalpel to a hammer of now people are just bringing it in to bring it in. And, you could argue that it's a deck building thing and that people aren't building their decks well, or you could argue that people are really leaning on it too hard. And, Blood Moon is one of those cards that a lot of people talk about specifically in Modern of it just really ruins games. They blame kind of 8th edition for that. And especially when you get into older formats and you can Simian Spirit Guide it out. I remember when my first night on VSL, I was playing Dragon Stompy, and poor Dave Williams, I just got there with turn 1 Blood Moons, and he didn't have a single basic in his deck. And, sometimes just slamming a Blood Moon and then backing it up with a Trinisphere or a Chalice, you just get free wins. And so it's a very controversial card, very polarizing card. It does do some good. Admittedly, it has good intentions, but I think, it's gotten a negative reputation because people have just started kind of, I don't want to say abusing it necessarily, but just they aren't bringing in, when they go through their sideboards, rather than bringing in better cards, it's just bring in Blood Moon, just sort of a catch-all kind of answer to things. And so it's a very, very polarizing card.
Blue Moon being one of the most iconic decks in Modern right now, plenty of the stompy decks in the older formats. Non-basic lands or mountains, hashtag change my mind. Right? I have cast many a Blood Moon in my day. Of course, the best example of which is, if you want to go Google, my finals appearance in Cincinnati in 2013 was a legacy top 8. In the semifinals, until very recently, last weekend, Peter Tubergen defeated Todd Stevens in 15 seconds in a feature match. Previous to that, I defeated Matt Hoey in the semifinals of Game 1. in 16 seconds. That was, for a long time, the shortest feature match game in Star City Games coverage history. But I was moving pretty slow. I very slowly played an Ancient Tomb and very slowly removed a Simian Sphere Deck. The pageantry, the excitement.
Oh, the pageantry. The pomp.
And this card, and
pageant wave.
Yeah, I love me a Blood Moon. I mean, when you get the Magus treatment, you know that you are an iconic piece of Magic history. And Magus of the Moon, obviously, with the Blood Moon effect.
Yeah, super cool. Super cool now. I'm telling you, back in the day, it was like, I cannot believe I opened this crap rare in Blood Moon. And then it got to like $60, and I just can't handle it. All right, so number 5, hashtag the cycle.
Yep.
Because we own it. Own the cycle. The same, over 1,000 cards, easy. Let's just say 1,500.
And the same number 5.
And
we're not done.
No. We're just getting started. Number 5 is the same for both of us because clearly we have some amount of revere for the card. It is unprecedentedly impressive in terms of its pedigree and what it's done. And everyone refers to its effect as a blank-like effect. And you know what that is, which is really cool when a card is so defining that it can do that for you. It also got a new Masters Edition painting, I believe it was, and this was it from Noah Bradley? Or no, this was Magic Online promo. Magic Online promo from Noah Bradley, absolutely gorgeous, because they can't make them anymore, because it's on a reserve list, because Moat is awesome. Moat is fantastic. Ruben, what does Moat do?
Moat, speaking of the Magus treatment, very simple line of text. Creatures without flying can't attack. Hashtag change my mind.
Yep.
Just another
generic this. I ran into this in one of my first games of Vintage. I remember I had a couple of my girlfriends with me, and we were on Skype, and we were playing Moto together, and I was kind of, dragging my brains out and sacrificing things like I'm wont to do, and I was just like, all right, here's 40 power and zombies, pass the turn, and then they're like, Moat? And I was like...
Zombies can't swim, can they?
It's part of the reason why we run Dragon Lord Kolagon, in case, that you happen to have a Moat, you can still at least get in there with a beater and maybe some Narcomoebas. But yeah, card's a thing.
Yeah. And there are Moat-like effects, and it does have a Magus, and it is a thing that was...
Moat is another great one.
Yeah. And it's a way for...
Also won a Pro Tour, let's keep in mind.
Oh, yeah. It's part of the deck, right? It was
part of the deck. It won Pro Tour 1, I believe.
Yeah.
It is super iconic, obviously, and if you want your own, you'll need a crisp $800 bill, according to CoolStuffInc.com. They are presently sold out there. So even for the Italian ones, which I think are only 500 or so, another card that's subject to a buyout, hashtag reserve list, etc. Moat, just one of the most iconic effects. Cards, even if you haven't seen one, you know what a Moat is and does. Super beloved. Obviously, it's in the cube. It's an absolutely bananas card.
Yeah. Shout out to my friend Lisa, who I'll never let her live this down. She's from Canada, and she had come across the border to the U.S. for a tournament, and I was just like, hey girl, what'd you do today? And she's like, I just picked up a Moat. I'm like, what?
Yikes.
What? Like you do, like you go get a hat, you go get a purse, Eternal Girls, we just go get Moats. That's what we do.
Makes you feel better. Moats are a girl's best friend.
Retail therapy,
It's banned in Magic Online, Commander, by the way, in case you didn't know that one. And so, it's just an extremely powerful card.
A Moat and a pedicure, vintage girl feels good,
There you go.
Gets it done. Aaron, what's your number 5?
Speaking of Vintage, I love my Legacy, I love my Vintage, and those two formats are known for cheap cards. We like our 1 mana cards, we like our 2 mana cards. We'll do 3 mana. We're not happy about it, but we'll do it. But anything higher than 3 mana, you got to be really, really good to see play in these two formats. So if you would have told me that a 10 mana card would ever see play, I would have laughed you out of the park. But it does. It sees play in at least a tier 1 deck in Legacy, a fringe deck in Vintage. My ex-boyfriend loves nothing more than to be able to play this card for free. My number 5 is Omniscience.
Yeah.
So Omniscience is 7 and 3 blue. What? And it's very simple. It says you may cast non-land cards from your hand without paying their mana cost. So if you're playing Sneak and Show or Omnitel, you basically, cast your Sneak and Show on turn 3 or turn 2 or even turn 1 if you have some accelerants, and then boop, omniscience. And then you just sort of chain your way into what you need to, and then slam an Emrakul, and you have a gale time. Rector Flash is a thing in Vintage. You play Academy Rector and then find a way to kill it, maybe by flashing back a Cabal Therapy. And then when the Rector dies, you'll get an Omniscience and basically do the same thing. The card is hilarious. And just if you look at it, you're like, why is this mythic? Like, what is going on here? But, if you find a way to pay nothing for it, you can have a really, really good time.
This to me is mythic. This is an absolute mythic card. This is a mythic rarity. Oh my God, I can just play anything for free? Like, it's $30. I was not prepared for this from Magic 2013 to be a $30 card. That's crazy.
Yeah, and there are some people that that's what they want to do in life. They just want nothing more than to drop a 10-mana enchantment and cast free spells.
All you got to do is cheat it in. And
nobody's ever paid retail.
Oh, no.
No, because you don't want to. You just want to play it for free. Like you play with everything else.
And I love that this is like the least threatening thing in show and tell, because they usually do the reveal. So they'll show and tell, and you're like, okay. And you both do like the showdown, and then if it falls, and you're like, whew, it's just an omniscience. And then you're like, wait a minute.
Wait a second.
No.
Wish, release the ants, bite you to death with tiny ant jaws.
Yes.
Tiny ant jaws would win.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, the card
also
is
was
sweet.
a big part of Omnidor Thragfire. Do we remember back in the day? The old Travis Wu special with the Thragtusk and Worldfire shenanigans, I guess. That was also pretty.
That was cute. Move on here to was this my number 4?
Sure.
Because we had a number 5 that we shared, and it's really cool actually because today, as of May 21st, 2018, Wizards finally actually started a spoiler season for Battle Bond because we had no idea what in the world was going on with it, and now we have like Fire Hose, and it's a thing. Cool. And one of the things that they just revealed about it was that it has a mythic rare. It has a mythic rare that's returning, a mythic rare that people are excited about, a mythic rare that costs $60. Well, it's not going to cost that much anymore, thanks to Doubling Season seeing a printing in Battle Bond. Doubling Season is, I think, as Mark Rosewater put it, the Mark Rosewater-ish card there is.
Sure.
Because it doubles things, and he learned originally from Berserk how things got double, and things were really cool that way. And so, Doubling Season is a green 4 generic mana. It is a rare originally from Ravnica City of Guilds, and it is now going to be a mythic from Battle Bond. It has an enchantment, of course, that has, if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. And if an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many of those counters on that permanent instead. And it can't be printed in Standard because Planeswalkers exist.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's played in Commander because Planeswalkers exist.
Yeah, any Atraxa deck worth their salt is running this card. The card gets out of hand so fast. Like, you really need to deal with it, the minute it hits the board, and even then you might be too late. And it's one of those cards. I remember my first taste of Doubling Season was, I remember when Hapatra came out, and I was trying to build a Hapatra deck, and I found a list on MTG Goldfish, and the cost of the deck was listed as $120, which is right up my alley. I like budget commanders, so 120 is in my price range. But I'm going through the list, and I'm like, where is the 120? I just don't, this is 50 cents. That's like 70 cents. The Doubling Season was $60. The one card was half the cost of the entire deck.
It doubled the cost of your deck.
Pretty much. And I was just like, what? And I had no idea. And then once I got a taste of it in the right deck, it's just absurd. It's so powerful.
Yeah, this card is
It's so funny that there's never really been a competitive Doubling Season deck. This is all casual, all commander, all the time for the cost of this. It is going to be in Battle Bond, though. That'll lower the price a little bit, but those commander-specific cards tend to keep their cost up. As we mentioned earlier, a couple of the cards that were that we talked about earlier, this will still be like a $40 card probably.
Oh, easily. Yeah. I'm not saying it's taken to the floor or anything, but it's good that it's getting a reprint at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've seen other versions too. Parallel Lives, sort of had a similar effect to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Doing some of the things the same.
And even Anointed Procession last time I looked was $10. It was like, why?
The word double is sweet. That's why.
People like to double when they can. So. Ruben, what's your number 4?
So, as I said, I had 4 criteria. Is it banned or restricted anywhere? Does it have a Pro Tour win? Is it part of the Magic Online Cube? Does it have a promo or a Master's Edition? That proves that it's powerful historically, it's powerful contextually, it has longevity, and it's popular. My top 4 fill all the boxes. The rest of the stuff, these are the only 4. Actually, there's one other, but it's an aura, so we'll save that for later. So my number 4 used to be banned in Legacy, isn't anymore. And so that's why it's the lowest ranked of these. But it did win, again, the first Pro Tour. It's got some sweet reprint art and has really iconic original art, in addition to being a big part of lots of different decks throughout the history of Magic. My number 4 is Land Tax.
Yeah.
So Land Tax says, at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for up to 3 basic land cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. If you do, shuffle your library for the low cost of only 1 white mana. That is a low opportunity cost for the chance to draw 3 cards every turn, even if those cards are just lands. The reason why this is so crazy, though, is because there are lots of ways to take advantage of those. For example, the tax rack strategy that was popular in the early days of Extended, maybe around Pro Tour 5 to 15. Also clearly part of the early control decks, the blue-white Sarah Angel, and even Stasis decks. The Michael Lecanto Pro Tour 1 control kind of decks as well. It received a judge promo treatment. It was unbanned in Legacy, and people were freaking out. How could this possibly see play in a Legacy format? And then people tried experimenting with it. Most primarily, I think Reed Duke was really trying to break Land Tax open. Never really worked out. Even though you have stuff like Brainstorm to be able to try to take advantage of it. But yeah, it's just a fabulous good card. It goes real late in Cube for some reason. I love this card in Cube.
Nobody respects Land Tax. No one gets it.
It's crazy.
No one's giving enough love to this card, which is just dumb. This card was I never was able to play with 4 of this card in Standard, even when I was playing in 4th edition, because it was restricted in Standard. They had that back then. And you got your 1 Strip Mine and you got your 1 Land Tax, and if you ever got them together, oh, the heavens opened, and it felt so good.
The game of being on the draw with Land Tax, where your opponent goes land, go, and you go land tax, go, and then they go, well, I could play a 2-drop, or I could pass and just concede the die roll to my opponent. Yeah, that was a fun time.
Oh my god, it was so good.
And when I think of Land Tax, I can't help but think of the art for me. It just sort of having that, that scraggly looking noble and just a huge sack of coins, and just that's what I think of.
It's a very iconic image, and Wizards also ran with that art quite a bit for many years. Land Tax itself, another card that I was like, wow, that's like a $20, $30 card? What?
Yeah, even though it's been printed like half a dozen times, it was also in a bunch. I mean, this proves how popular the card was. There are a lot of the championship deck printings of Land Tax, which means that there's 6 of them, which means that at least 6 times over the course of the championship decks, that card made top 4, top 8, won a tournament of major clout and quality.
Oh yeah, big time. And I think the most recent release was the Judge promo. But yeah, Land Tax itself is great. There's a few things like that awesome feeling of being on the draw. And you're like, you wanna keep that card? You wanna just pass the turn? You gonna let me go first now? All right, great. That's great. You can switch places. Okay, so let's see here. Aaron, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is higher on somebody else's list. It's my only higher tonight.
Fair enough. Well, we are all up in that cycle, and we'll get back to that here in a little bit. So let's move on here to number 3. Ruben, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is, it's just so good. It's so good that now apparently it's making a footprint in Vintage, which is kind of out of nowhere. It's banned in Legacy. We've talked about why it's banned in Legacy. There was a time where it was the best control deck, best aggro deck, and best combo deck of the format for a long time. It's won a Pro Tour in the hands of Brian Selden at Worlds, defeating a Stompy deck in the finals, or a Sly deck, I think, in the finals. It's just, man, what can't you say about Survival of the Fittest? The card is just so good. The card's just so good in every facet of the game, historically, in terms of in Standard, obviously comboing with Recurring Nightmare, and then as you go back in time, it just gets even more ridiculous as time goes on. So what does it do? Well, Survival of the Fittest is a colorless and a green enchantment originally from Exodus. It's a rare, and has the ability to pay a green and discard a creature card. Search your library for a creature card, reveal that card, and put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. Repeatable tutoring, already completely busted.
Yeah.
Add to that the fact that you can discard it, put it in your graveyard, which is a resource that some people like to use. And boy, you have a recipe for a card that is an all-star all-time.
Yeah, this has been experiencing a resurgence in Vintage, specifically with cards like Hollow One and Basking Root Walla, and Vengevine. So the theory being that you just dump your Vengevines and then you tutor for a Hollow One if you have a Bazaar out. You can tutor for a Basking Root Walla and then even just discard it to the Survival of the Fittest, trigger Madness, and before you know it, you cast 2 creatures and you get a slew of Vengevines back. The Mana Drain is sort of the Vintage board du jour for the deck builders and people who love Vintage. There have been a group of people who've been working on this deck for about a month. I took it out for a spin recently. I had never had the pleasure of playing with Survival of the Fittest, and oh my god. Just some of the crazy turns that you have, being able to play with cards like Anger and Wonder, where you have this army and then you pitch it to Survival, and then now your creatures have flying, and now your creatures have haste. And so, there's all sorts of things you can do, not to mention the toolbox element of being able to tutor for things you specifically need. I was able to destroy a Leyline of the Void one day by just pitching a Birds of Paradise, getting a Wismare, and then whoop, my opponent scooped. And so the card is magnificent, and I'm a very recent convert to it. And I'm sure I'm not even using it to its fullest, but that says something about a card when you're not even going ham and you're still doing broken things, and I love it.
It's the only enchantment that really had its own aggro combo control decks around the same card, which is ridiculous. Yep. So for those who may be first time listeners, the way that we build our lists is that we send them to a third party to see if we have any sames or hires before the show starts, and that way we don't talk about the same cards over and over. That said, there was a slight mistake because Survival of the Fittest was my number 2.
My number 4.
Oh, well, there you go. So that was right smack in the, we're right here. We're right here with Survival. We know how good and stupid and crazy that card is, and it's fine. Obviously, you didn't know. But, in Survival, again, just it had its own archetypes. It drove its own, and people were just like, ban Vengevine! And we're like, are you really?
It had seriously? So many different life cycles now. It was,
it was
dominant in Standard, it was dominant in Old Extended, it was dominant in Legacy to the point of getting banned, and now it's going to be close to dominant in Vintage, which is kind of crazy.
Wow. Well, my number 3 here is a fantastic card, a really cool card. It's been printed a few times, and it's still $20 because it is a casual staple cube all-star. This is one of the cards that if you're playing this color, it's in your cube. It's just how it works. You don't think twice about it because there's very, very few ways for green to get card advantage and look at cards, and Sylvan Library is the way that you do that. Yes. Sylvan Library is fan-freaking-tastic. It comes from Legends, and I don't know if I should put everyone through the misery of reading the actual card text, because it is a delight.
It is a word salad.
I'm still not 100% clear what the card does. I've certainly had people drop it against me, and I just
so I'll give you the Gatherer version, so make it as straightforward as possible. Green and a generic mana enchantment from Legends. At the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. If you do, choose 2 cards in your hand drawn this turn. For each of those cards, pay 4 life or put the card back on top of your library. So you draw those 3, and you keep all of them and lose 8, or keep 2 of them and put the other one back.
This with a visual.
4. And it's a thing that you can do, and it is absolutely terrific. I mean, clearly any
Magic
shuffle
Online
effect
really helps you with what Sylvan Library does, and so I recommend drafting 1 just to see how it works whenever the cube happens. Originally an uncommon, so you got an uncommon on your list there, Evan. That's a nice tick mark.
Nice little slide
Sylvan Library is spectacularly good. Obviously, I probably could have done an entire top 10 of green enchantments just because of how good green is. Yeah. And also colorless in a green enchantments. The fact that I don't have Justice for Earthcraft in my top 10 is a problem, guys. But you know what? Sylvan Library and Survival are going to take precedence. So
yeah, this card is just non-stop value. Feel free to blow any of your judge friends' minds with Chains of Mephistopheles plus Sylvan Library.
There are flow charts, like diagrams, spider things. It's insane.
This is another one with humility, where people just set up these hilarious hypotheticals of all right, you have a Tomorrow Azami's Familiar in play. It's just like, wow, I don't want to even continue the sentence anymore.
Just stop. And it's great because
My brain hurts.
Silver Library is awesome because you're able, like, there's no cube that runs green cards and is okay with powerful cards. You know those cubes.
Yeah.
You don't have Silver Library. It doesn't happen. It is one of the staplest staples to ever staple a staple.
Absolutely.
All right. So Aaron, what's number 3?
Oh, you wanted a twist, eh? You guys are talking about uncommons on your list. I got an uncommon for your nerves. You ready? Mm-hmm. So this card is a staple of a vintage deck. It's not too prominent, but it's certainly a thing. There's a young man on Magic Online who plays vintage, and I just realized just now where he got his name from. His Magic Online handle is Take Your Time. My number 3 is Standstill. Nice. So that Take Your Time is the flavor text of Standstill. I get you now, Take Your Time. I see you. Nice. So Standstill is 1 in a blue. It's an enchantment. It says, whenever a player casts a spell, sacrifice Standstill. If you do, each of that player's opponents draws 3 cards. So you slam this on like turn 1 and you're like, pass! And then you just wait. And they got to do something. And then when they do, you draw 3 cards. And Rich Shea has been playing a version of this list called Embalm Still for the VSL, running several Embalm and Eternalize creatures, because when you're embalming, you're eternalizing, you're not casting anything.
It's true.
And so you slam a Standstill and be like, here's a 4/4 Vizier of something. Pass. And the opponent's like, I gotta cast something to deal with it. And then when you do, it blows up and you gain 3. And it's just a really neat way for control decks to do its thing. You know, certainly we've all seen our share of counter spells. Lunar Force was something that happened recently as like a more watered down take on this of an enchantment that can counter things. But, you know, it really does sort of create this tension of like, you gonna do nothing? Do you really want me to have 3 cards? And then if God forbid you have any way to sort of recur this, that's a thing. And yeah, Blue-White Landstill has been a thing. Blue-White Standstill has been a thing in Vintage for a while. Some lists even like to run Dragonlord Ojutai for the spice. But yeah, Standstill is really what makes the whole thing come together.
This card is very powerful. This card is one of those that it helps you, even just as a Magic player, it helps you to play with and against this card to really feel the tension that it makes. Because if I go Island, Mishra's Factory, Standstill, go. Like, that's a problem. That's a thing that you have to deal with.
I just cast spells. Like, I'm like, all right, you
whatever.
Draw 3 cards. Cool, man. There's nothing I can do. Like, you did it. Well done. I mean, obviously, lots of different decks have had popularity. It's really strange to me how powerful enchantments tend to be in decks together. Obviously, Paul Cheon with Dreadstill at Worlds in 2008 in the Legacy portion helped Team USA win alongside Phyrexian Dreadnought Stifle combo with Standstill alongside of Counterbalance. Counterbalance kind of pushed Standstill out of the Legacy format for a while there. But hopefully we'll get a little bit of more time back. And of course, it won us a Pro Tour in Blue-Green Madness, 4 copies of Standstill alongside other notable powerful enchantment, Squirrel Nest. I'm not sure I don't know about that one. This mana base is pretty garbage. But Ken Ho won Pro Tour Osaka 2002 with 3 Squirrel Nest, 4 Standstill, and his mana base is 13 Forest, 9 Island, and a Tarnished Citadel. I'm not sure that's game theory optimized. I'm just looking at these decks. That's a pretty. I'm not on board with that. But Standstill, also Evan, one of the most popular control archetypes in what is it, pre-modern or whatever the name of that made-up format is.
It's fine.
Yeah,
however you want to have fun with Magic, man. No.
Card's great. I love that card.
That's cool. I mean, and again, that's just one of the things to show you that, you know, yes, they don't have access to some cards, but Standstill, it just goes all over the place. This is a very powerful effect. They haven't gone anywhere near reprinting it. It's not on the reserve list.
Some of my favorite games are when someone goes Standstill, go, and then the next 8 turns are draw, go, draw, go, draw, go, draw, go, draw, go.
Land go, land go, land
it's
go.
Hilarious, yeah.
Right, but again, it just takes 1 Mutavault and 1 Mishra's Factory, and then additional Mishra's Factories to pump the first one, and so on and so forth.
Hey now, let's not forget Fairy Enclave. Sometimes they run fairies to get the job done. Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody's welcome at the Standstill party.
That's great. So we move on here to number 2. Now, again, my number 2 was Survival of the Fittest, which I think it is fine there, has earned that spot. Ruben, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is another colorless and a green enchantment from Exodus. What were they doing? Obviously, this is why we couldn't have Justice for Earthcraft on my list, because my number 2 is Oath of Druids.
This card.
Boy, is the Oath of Druids a hell of a Magic card, am I right, folks? Mm-hmm. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player chooses target player who controls more creatures than they do, and is their opponent. The first player may reveal cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. If that player does, that player puts that card onto the battlefield, and all other cards revealed in this way into their graveyard. Originally part of a cycle of oaths, Oath of Ghouls,
which nobody talks about.
Like Oath of Druids. Oath of Druids is like the pill. Okay, there's a lot of pills in the world, but there's only one pill. When I tell you the pill,
capital T, capital P, the pill.
That's the Oath of Druids thing. That's what I'm talking about, because no one cares about the other oaths.
It feels like. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
In my list is it banned anywhere? Yeah, it's banned in Legacy. All right. Does it have a Pro Tour win? Yeah, it has 2 different Pro Tour wins. Turbo Oath from Justin Gary and Bob Marr, obviously winning Pro Tour Chicago in 1999. And It speaks to the power level of the card Oath of Druids when the total number, the total list of creatures in main decks among those 2 are Morphling, Shard Phoenix, and Spike Feeder in Bob Marr's deck, and Cognivore in Justin Gary's deck.
Yeah.
None of those cards are good, but they're good on turn 2 when you don't have to cast them.
I mean, it says something about the power level of the card when you can run nonsense. Brian Kelly is a young man who has been spending a lot of time playing Oath. You'll see him on the Vintage Super League this season. They've now started running Inferno Titans. They'll put in a Nezahal from Ixalan. Carnage Tyrant was in there.
Boca was a popular
I mean, but it says something about the card when you can run nonsense, and it doesn't matter because it's so good. This is another one of those cards that it feels like they always have. Like, I can't tell you how many times it's been Forbidden Orchard, Moxen, Oath, go. And you're like...
So for those who don't know exactly how it works, basically, because it's a little weird and wordy. I mean, even when I first got this, and I really get it.
Another checklist one of, you have it in play, or it is in play.
Yes.
Step 1, does your opponent have more creatures than you? If so, move to next step.
Which is revealing the top card of your library.
Reveal until you reveal a creature.
Usually it's a Gristlebrand. Infernal Titan is a common one as well. I played a version called Saheeli Oath, which is where you would look for Sun Titan, and then you would chain Saheeli Oath and Sun Titans and win the game that way. You use a card like Forbidden Orchard to ensure that your opponent always has a creature.
Beast Within is another popular choice.
Yeah, otherwise you're kind of doing the Oath dance. It's also a May ability. I remember when I was practicing for VSL last season, I decked myself because I was like, I have to do this. And it's like, no, you don't have to. But yeah, a card is absurdly powerful, and it just feels like they always have it, and then just play whatever because it's just fine.
It's true. And again, there's only one Oath. And
the other step that's interesting with Oath of Druids is if your opponent has a card like Containment Priest or Grafdigger's Cage, you can do the whole shebang and then leave the creature on top. So it's really helpful to have castable creatures because it's essentially worldly tutoring while also milling a little bit. So things like Aureox Salvagers have been popular in the past, and of course the 6-drops being able to be cast off of your Black Lotus and your artifact mana and stuff like that. Oath of Druids is probably the 4th pillar of the Vintage format. Obviously, multiple Pro Tours, banned in Legacy. What else can you say?
Aaron, what's number 2?
Speaking of Vintage, this card was recently unrestricted on my birthday last year. There was an August 28th banned and restricted announcement. This card was unrestricted. I had never even seen it played in Vintage until this announcement happened. And then I remember tuning into my friend Tagoras' stream where he cast it on turn 1. Like you do, which isn't bad for a card that costs 6. It is banned in Legacy, banned in Commander, and it's still it is legal in Vintage. You haven't lived until you've played a Yawgmoth's Bargain. So Yawgmoth's Bargain is 4 and 2 black. It's an enchantment, and it's very simple. It just says skip your draw step. Okay. And then pay 1 life and draw a card. Now, I know we got Necropotence, and she's cute, but, like, there's a lot of worriness on that one. This is just quick and dirty. Pay a life, draw a card. There's none of that exiling nonsense. There's none of that whatever. I faced a young man the other day. It's one of the most memorable games I've ever seen. He dropped this at 18 life, drew 17 cards, and then scooped.
Yep, that'll happen.
Sometimes you just don't find what you need, but oftentimes you do. The nice thing about this card is try removing it. Fine, I'll just draw 15 cards. Like, just, the power level of this card is just absurd, and especially when you're playing with Dark Rituals and Moxen and Lotuses, being able to cheat this card out before turn 6, and if you're playing a combo deck where you just need to get to your pieces and you need to do it fast, who cares if you're going to lose 7 life or draw yourself 9 deep, as long as you find what you need, and the card is just gross, and I'm so glad it's around, and I just love everything about it.
It turns out the win is just as legitimate if you get it at 1 life than if you get it at 20. It really does not matter what that total is as long as you're the winner.
Yeah, right.
This is hilarious because this was supposed to be the fixed Necropotence. This is where Mark Rosewater's like, I got it, guys. I can fix this crazy, overpowered rocket. I'll strap more rockets on it. I swear it's fine. It will go faster as it smashes literally everything in its path. Because it was kind of important that you didn't get all your cards right away when you Necropotence. That was actually kind of a key to the card actually working. And instead, you're like, whatever, you're paying twice as much, go nuts. And it did. And everybody did. And it was broken. And it was busted as all hell. It was ridiculous.
What?
That card's nuts. All right. So it's time to turn the corner to number 1 here. Hashtag that cycle. The cycle is complete. The cycle says that number 8, number 5, and number 1 were all the same cards
between me and Evan.
Yeah,
it's like we didn't need us here. It's like in episode 1, Phantom Menace, when there were 2 characters named Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and they could have just been one character named Obi-Wan.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I didn't need to be here today.
One of them had to die, though. We had to get that death in there.
I don't know about that.
So whatever, it's fine.
I'd say that you have to die in that case.
Well, look, thanks. Well, if
Yawgmoth's,
if Yawgmoth, actually you brought it up, Necropotence is a card that Yawgmoth's bargain was fixing, right? Because
sorry, what did you say?
Necropotence.
It's not Necropotence?
It's not Necropotence, as it turns out.
One of those weirdos for a year.
Oh my god. No. Necropotence, well, first of all, named the worst card in Ice Age by Inquest. That will never go away. That is forever. I love that.
We went behind the ears. We didn't know.
Oh man, and I took that as the gospel, y'all. I was like, never touching a Necropotence. You guys are terrible. What are you doing? I don't care. Necropotence itself is number 1 for me and Ruben because this card is dumb. This card doesn't... It lived in a world with Dark Ritual. All you needed was a swamp, Dark Ritual, Necropotence, and a friend to beat up on because that's what this card did. It just stomped your friend in the mud. Necropotence is 3 black mana for a rare enchantment from Ice Age that says skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. Pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library face down. Put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. So you still had to discard down to 7 cards. You couldn't just draw 15 unless you wanted to do something at instant speed during your end step.
Yawgmoth's bargain.
Like playing Yawgmoth's bargain, because who cares? But Necropotence... I mean, it ran magic. There was Necro Summer. It won all the events there for a couple years almost. It was like they finally had to get rid of it because the card was just broken.
Card was absurd. Randy Bueller obviously won Pro Tour Chicago '97.
It's a Twitter picture.
That's right. It's the first Pro Tour in Chicago. Wow. At this point, the second most famous, but he won that tournament without Dark Ritual in his Necropotence deck. Wow. Obviously, Brian Davis got second place at Chicago in 1999. That one was more of the Lake of the Dead Dark Ritual, slightly bigger mana, a little bit of a control style strategy. The Masters series and the Junior series were bigger on Necro before, Millstone decks won Pro Tours for a minute there before people were like, oh, right, Necropotence is the most bananas thing that's ever happened. Lake Rage was a popular archetype for about half a second when Urza's Rage came out so that they could start pumping out tons of mana and just deal, and drain life Urza's Rage. Yep, and Lake of the Dead.
Good times.
There were some insane things you could do with Necropotence, and it led to Black's identity of paying a life to draw cards. With cards like Yawgmoth's Bargain, with cards like Dark Confidant, other iconic cards.
Oh, yeah.
Things like Yeah, Ad Nauseam is another great example. Plenty of examples over the years, all the way up through things like Dark Bargain in the most recent Dominaria expansion. Paying life for cards is part of Black's color identity now, and it's all thanks to necropotence, as Aaron said, or necropotence. Obviously, it's banned in Legacy. Why is that even a question? Restricted in Vintage. It's got Pro Tour wins. It's
Commander.
Yeah.
Go nuts, because that's the only place you're ever going to see it unrestricted, because this card is dumb and it's neat. It's weird that they keep trying to put it in things and acting like it's, an expensive card. Like, I feel like they act like it's an expensive card, and it's like, guys, it's not really. It's like $5. No one really cares. It's fine. But they're like, but this mythic, and you're like, no, no more necropotence.
Unrestricted in Vintage or unban it in Legacy. See what happens to the price.
There we go. Buy into those futures. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
All right. So, Aaron, what's your number one?
So we established early on in the show that enchantments are best when they're sort of changing the rules, or they're changing the way that the game is played. And we've kind of run the gamut of Blood Moon, which turns non-basic lands into mountains. We've talked about cheating death with cards like Phyrexian Unlight. We've talked about, pushing yourself closer to death with cards like Necropotence, and I almost said it again, Necropotence.
You almost got there. We saw that.
You make fun of me for saying shaman every time that we talk about Death Right. So.
Now, here's the thing, though. When I'm in private, I keep the Necropotence for private. When I'm in public, I say Necropotence. When I'm home alone in my room, it's Necropotence.
Necropotence in the streets, Necropotence.
But we talked about all the ways that you can sort of do, broken things, or you can play the game a little differently. My number one, it changes the game in such a way to where you don't even need to cast it. It's got a mana cost, but it literally does nothing if you pay the 3 black mana for it. My number one's Bridge from Below. So Bridge from Below is 3 black. It's an enchantment. It says whenever a non-token creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, if Bridge from Below is in your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. When a creature is put into your opponent's graveyard from the battlefield, if Bridge from Below is in your graveyard, exile Bridge from Below. It literally does nothing if you cast it. You have no incentive to cast it. It needs to be in your graveyard. And at that point, whenever you have a creature that dies, you get a token for your trouble. If you have multiple bridges in play, one creature can very easily turn into 3 or 4. If you have cards like Cabal Therapy, where you can flash it back, or even just combat, just throwing a Narcomoeba in front of something and getting 4 zombies for your trouble. It's possible to stack your triggers. So for example, if you're doing combat and both of you are about to lose a creature, you can stack it to where you will get your zombies before your bridges get exiled. So there's all sorts of ways you can sort of manipulate that. But yeah, the card is just hilarious. It changes the game for graveyard decks. Savvy opponents will know to kill their own things. So for example, if you're facing a Delver deck and they know what you're about to do, they'll be like, bolt my Delver. And it's like, damn. But a lot of people don't realize that killing your own thing stops the bridge from happening. So this is also a card that, Arcbound Ravager, Walking Ballista is a nightmare for us because they sacrifice something and all my bridges go away. And so if you're playing Layla of the Void, that protects your bridges because their creatures don't technically die. So there's all sorts of neat ways you can do it. But I love what this card does for the game. I love the way that you can stack your triggers. I love sort of the tension of, does my opponent know that they can kill something, and how to do all of that. And I just love it, the fact that you don't even need to cast it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird card. It was from Future Sight, and they're like, let's make things weird and then give Aaron's favorite card ever. It's cool that we're kind of on a cycle that our favorite enchantment are all black. That's kind of neat.
That's what I was going to mention.
Triple
That's
black
awesome.
for everything. Yep. That's actually really cool, I think. And obviously there wouldn't really be a dredge deck. Would there be a dredge deck if they banned Bridge from Below?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely there would be.
So, there's some matchups where you just don't care.
Trigger it existed.
Yeah, if you're so far along to where you just don't care, it's fine. But it's more or less just kind of gravy, if anything. But yeah.
Bridge from Below came out at the same time that Narcomoeba came out, so it's tough to know if there would be a Dread Return Narcomoeba dredge strategy without Bridge from Below. But I think that there probably would be. Right. And just in case y'all aren't aware, I'm sure that some astute fans of Magic Mics have heard the story before, but the Magic Show episode number 43, which came out May 9th, 2007, featured guest appearances. Let me read you the description of this episode of The Magic Show, by the way. Hello, everybody. This week we have 2 guest hosts filling in for me as I relax at the beach. Nick Miller and Ruben Dressler.
Is that still wrong?
It's still wrong.
Oh my god!
Give you
I'm
the
fixing
latest
that right
in standard
now.
Magic and their thoughts on future sites.
Which one was it?
See you next week.
Magic Show.
Episode 43,
Goodness.
titled "The Future Is Bleak," with Nick and Ruben, Nick Miller and Ruben Bressler.
Oh
my first
God.
appearance working along with Evan. And we covered a lot of future site. We talked a lot about Bridge from Below in that episode and how that was probably going to take over the format in the Dredge deck, which at the time included stuff like Magus of the Bazaar and some other crazy ways to get cards into your graveyard in Standard. And so that was my introduction to Magic content creation. I hadn't written an article up to that point. I hadn't done anything. Nick and I were hall mates, and at that point, still friends. And Nick says, "Hey, there's this video that exists. We both do media stuff. We're both into Magic. We should see if we can do a substitute episode." And so that's how I launched my Magic career, partially thanks to Bridge from Below.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the card's absurd. It's brought me a lot of joy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
If nothing else, something else that'll bring you a lot of joy is my haircut in this video. It is. I got quite the ponytail going on.
Oh, it's so pony.
It's a lot.
It's a bunch.
There's a lot.
And I have fixed it, by the way. It is no longer Ruben Dressler. It's only been that way for 11 years. It's fine.
You're going to get some poor sap who's going to come up to you at a GP and be like, Are you? And you're going to be like, yeah. And you're going to be like, are you Ruben Dressler?
Are you the Dressler we all heard about?
It's okay. It's been up for 11 years. It has 11,000 views. I've given it its 52nd like.
Okay. Work.
That is awesome. And those are our favorite non-aura enchantments. You'll see them on the screen right now for your review. Please take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, and thank you for not putting Rest in Peace or Layla of the Void on your lists.
Wow. Fair. Ruben, thanks a lot.
Thank you. I had an enchanted evening.
You sure did.
Okay.
Which begins with apologies to Rebecca Gay. That said, I want to thank our sponsor.
Hashtag Gay Pride.
Hashtag Gay Pride. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler, or Dressler, if you will. You guys for watching, and I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com, or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv at Magic Mics, on Twitter at Magic Mics Cast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast@libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.
Ruben Dressler is my drag name.
Dressler with my love.
All over, all over.
Oh my god.
All right. We're really done now. Good night.